Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on the fundamentals of retail pricing rules. I'm Sarah Stockton, the VP of Product Management at ClearDemand. Presenting today is Dr. Jim Sills, President and CEO of ClearDemand. Jim founded ClearDemand 10 years ago with a mission to build pricing solutions that deliver more value faster through more accurate forecasts and easier adoption. Prior to starting ClearDemand, Dr. Sills pioneered the first price optimization solution for retail at Kaimetrics and was the CTO at Revionics. He worked in signal intelligence for a number of years at Southwest Research Institute and taught at the University of Texas. He did his PhD in electrical engineering at Georgia Tech. Dr. Sills has published over 20 papers and has nearly 20 patents. In our last webinar, we presented the efficient frontier of retail pricing, which is fundamental to price optimization. Today, we will focus on retail pricing rules. Today, attendees will learn about common pricing rules and which rules are most important for managing a pricing strategy. We will present and compare both hard rules and soft rules and discuss how to handle rules that conflict with one another. Dr. Sills will discuss rules that maintain price premiums between brand, size, and other attributes like organic or Energy Star. Examples are then presented that examine how hard and soft rules incorporate with price optimization. The presentation includes a comparison of ending number rules and price rounding. Finally, a discussion is included that describes which pricing rules are most important for various categories in retail verticals. We welcome your questions submitted through the question window in the GoToWebinar application. Please submit questions as we go through the material, and we will pause and address them throughout the webinar. Your questions will always remain anonymous. With no further ado, here is Dr. Sills.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. The information I'm presenting today is important because it really addresses shopper trust. So this is a real example that you're seeing on the screen of a value pack where there's a 3-pack versus another value pack, which is a 2-pack. And one of the things that you'll see in a retail store sometimes is a sign that says buy more, save more. And shoppers come to expect that if they buy a bigger package size, they should be rewarded with that larger basket by a savings on a price per ounce, for example, in this case. But in this case, the price per ounce on the 3-pack is actually 54 cents per ounce. That's shown right here in the middle of the screen versus 46 cents per ounce on the 2-pack. And this is a real example. And when this happens, the shopper then has to really be a lot more careful when they're comparing which product they want to buy. And it creates friction in the transaction. It slows down that shopper experience, and it really breaks the trust. The shopper no longer feels that they can just go, pick up the larger pack size and they're assured of some savings. That's just not, you've just broken that trust, and now they're going to verify it. And they're going to do that all across, the store in every aisle as they look at all their shopping purchases. And that is not the experience a shopper wants. And it really goes against this whole idea of frictionless transactions. So when the prices are not right, it really, really affects things. So we're going to dig in to how pricing rules can ensure that you don't violate that shopper trust. And we're going to learn a lot of other things too today. So we're going to look at just starting out with some examples of some common pricing rules, how rules and optimization work together. That's a very critical thing to understand. And then what is a hard rule? What is a soft rule? And there's sometimes there's a simple heuristic that is used in place of true hard rules and soft rules. So we're going to look at that heuristic and understand what are you compromising if you follow that. We'll look at how rules are localized, both to different stores and to different products. And what happens when rules conflict? That's very, very key. And then how do you maintain your price premiums across brand, size, and other attributes like organic, or in light bulbs, Energy Star, one of my favorite examples. Um, and how do hard rules compare to soft rules, and how do ending numbers work with rules? And then how we're going to have a brief discussion about what rules are more important for which categories and which retail verticals. So I think we've got some very exciting information to present today, and I'm especially excited because I think the insights that we offer here today are really this is some new stuff. This is, I don't think anyone's really understood this the way we're going to present it today. Um, and I think this is going to change how people think about the space. So let's start with some examples of some rules. First of all, ending numbers. You obviously have things like end in nines, you know, 299, 999, 349. You know, rarely do you end in, you know, $2.01, but there are some cases where you do, and I'll cover that at the end. Price family rules are where, you know, I'll just jump to the next slide here. That's where different flavors of yogurt, for example, in the same size and same brand would be priced the same. That's what a price family is. That's a very common rule in retail. Minimum margin rules are pretty typical. And you can have a maximum margin rule as well. Competitive rules, where maybe you want to price below a competitor or not be too much above them. Price change rules. This can be really, you know, don't change my price by more than 5%, or don't change it by more than $1. That would be an example of a price change rule. Sometimes those are called step rules. Brand and size rules, attribute rules, pricing tiers. You know, some things are priced at, you know, at a top tier, some are at a middle tier, and some are at a lower tier. Some SKUs are related to other SKUs. Some prices are locked. Maybe they're pre-priced and you just don't change them, or you just want to keep them there for a while. Maybe because you just changed the price recently. The number of price changes. Stores can only accommodate so many price changes at a time. All of these things are examples of rules. And if you have other examples, please share them. And there's other aspects of rules, like rules that are one directional, where maybe one SKU will push on another SKU, but not vice versa. And then, of course, there's things like prioritization of rules and so on. So we're going to dig into some of these. I already mentioned price families, but one of the rules that, you know, we started with was the size rule. That was the example we began with. As you know, usually the price per unit decreases as the size increases. Buy more, save more. That's a pricing strategy. And your rules enforce that strategy, that you comply with that strategy. So the strategy could be every time the shopper doubles their purchase, they save 10%. That would be a real good example of a buy more, save more price strategy. And this graph that's on the screen, it kind of shows you the relationship here. So the price per unit goes down as the size goes up, and you may have some, you know, items that are not on that curve, and so you have a couple choices. You can lower the price of this, you know, this single item, you know, the one bottle, raise the price of the 12 pack, leave the 6-pack alone, or you can move the whole curve up or down and get everyone on the curve, you know, get all the different sizes on the curve. So that's the idea of a size rule. So a competitive rule can also be incorporated with the size rule. So let's look at an example of this. So you're a retailer and you carry two different sizes of Tide, one at 13 cents for the per ounce for the 75 fluid ounces, and then at 150 fluid ounces, you failed to give them any up purchase incentive. So that's where your prices are. And then you find that your competitor is at 11 cents per ounce. But you don't carry the 100 fluid ounce. The competitor carries it, but you don't. So what you're looking for the rules to do is you're looking, you know, you've got two rules in play. One is a size relationship that's represented here in blue, and you have a force that's saying, hey, this compare, this 75 ounce compared to this 150 ounce, the size relationship says this guy wants to go up and this guy wants to go down in price. So if you look at just that influence, you can see in this, by the length of these vectors and the direction of the vectors, kind of what the size rule is trying to do. And then you have the competitive rule. Since your competition is below you, and let's say you're wanting to match them, the competitive rule says, hey, I want to drop the price on this guy, but not all the way to the competitor because I have to account for the competitor's size. And over here, I need to drop the price even further because I'm 150 ounces and I should be below the competitor on a price per unit basis. So, a good rules engine will accommodate all these considerations and arrive at prices that have the right size relationships and the right competitive relationships. So that's the gist of what you're trying to do with rules. Now, the rules are not one size fits all. You're not necessarily wanting to beat competition on every item in the store. Maybe you only want to beat competition on KVI items, or what are known as known value items, key value items. These items may be set up with a competitive price index of 0.9, meaning I want to be 10% below the competition. Whereas all the other items, maybe I'm okay being 10% above the competition. So you have this idea that certain products should have different targets for their competitive price index, and certain stores as well. Certain stores, maybe this is suntan lotion, and some stores are on the beach and other stores aren't, and if you're not on the beach, it's not a KVI item. So that's an example how rules need to be localized by product and store. All right, so we've covered a lot so far. Let me keep going. Now we're going to get into this idea of optimization. So what you're trying to do with optimization, and we covered this in detail in the last webinar, is we're trying to maximize value, where value is a function of profit and revenue. So that you have this parameter lambda that tells you how much do you value profit over lambda. So if lambda's, or profit over revenue. So if lambda is 1, then you care about profit exclusively because 1 minus 1 is 0 and revenue drops out of the value equation. If lambda is 0, then profit drops out and all you care about is revenue. And if lambda is 0.5, it just means you care about both profit and revenue equally. So you care about profit if you're trying to reward your shareholders. You care about revenue generally if you're trying to beat the competition and win market share. And so you have some value curve that changes as a function of price, and then you've got these rules that say don't go above the competition, and make sure you maintain some minimum margin. So this region here is what we call the feasible range, because you can be at any price in that feasible range and you're satisfying all the rules. So the price you want to be at is the one that maximizes value within that feasible range. That's how optimization works with hard rules. Now let's look at how optimization works with soft rules. So again, you have the same value curve, and now I'm just showing you the value curve. And when the value when you have no consideration for rules, we call that the unconstrained value curve. And the maximum point on that unconstrained value curve is the unconstrained optimum. It's the best price you can be at to achieve the most value without any consideration of rules. But let's suppose that we have a rule that says don't price above the competition, where the competition is priced right here. We know that below that price, you're satisfying the rule, and above the price, you're violating the rule. So the way soft rules work is the more you violate the rule, the greater the penalty for that violation. And that penalty is subtracted from the unconstrained value curve to form the constrained value curve. So all you've done is as this penalty ramps up, you're just subtracting more and more and more from the unconstrained value curve to produce the constrained value curve. Effectively, what you're doing is you're bending the curve and you're moving the optimum point from this higher price to a lower price. And so this is how a soft rule works. That is exactly what it does. So now you know the difference between how optimization works with a hard rule and how optimization works with a soft rule. The soft rule, has this idea that I'm okay violating the rule if I can make a lot of money. I'll
Hey,
relax.
Jim.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have a question on this slide. Do we have reporting for the cost of a rule?
Yeah, yeah. The ClearDemand solution does have reporting, and it is very interesting to see which rules are costing you the most, whether those are hard rules or soft rules. And that's a critical capability that a pricing solution should have. You should very easily be able to see which rules are costing you money. And with soft rules, you're okay violating the rule if it's worthwhile from a financial standpoint. So now there is a heuristic that can be proposed as an alternative because there's a lot of science in those rules, a lot of science actually. And this soft rule heuristic is very simple. It's basically, I'm going to treat every rule individually. I'm going to treat the optimum price individually, and then I'm going to just do some kind of a weighted average of those individual prices that come out of all these individual analyses. And then I'm going to round that to get the recommended price. So this is a heuristic, and it's meant to be an approximation of soft rules. And it was proposed as a approach that would be just we don't necessarily have to get why go into all that science when we could just do this, because this is super easy. Well, let's look at what you might be giving up if you use a heuristic instead of something more rigorous. So what happens with with soft rules, when this unconstrained value curve is very concave, it's very peaked, is that there's a lot of value to be had for every little bit of violation I keep adding in here. So as I move to the right and violate the rule more and more, because of the steepness of this curve, it's worth it. It's worth violating the rule. So I'm going to move to something that's pretty far along toward the optimum price, the unconstrained optimum price. Whereas if I'm on a value curve that's more flat, if I violate the rule, I'm not really getting very much because there's not much reward for that violation. So in this case, the true constrained optimum is not much beyond where the rule would put you. Now, the heuristic is shown here in red, and the heuristic doesn't change. It doesn't change whether if the value curve is peaked or flat, it doesn't care. All it cares about is taking the unconstrained optimum price and the maximum rule price and averaging those together in some weighted way, which in this case, it's about equally weighted. So we're about halfway between the maximum price that the rule dictates and the optimum price. So we're just going right, we're kind of hedging right between the two. Well, what this means is that the heuristic does not account for the value curve. So sometimes it doesn't go far enough, and other times it goes too far. So the heuristic It's very simple, very easy, but it does not account for the value curve. So it's kind of a poor man's rule and optimization combination in that it's very easy to do, shouldn't cost very much to do that. It's so simple, but you don't get all the value. But there's an additional limitation, and that is it imposes penalties where none should apply. And the next example goes into that. So let's go into this example. I think you're going to find there's a lot in this example, but it's well worth taking a look. So we're going to talk about a 6-pack of Coke. And we're going to have a price strategy that says, I got to have at least 30% gross margin. So that results in a price versus cost relationship shown here. Second, I want to be at or below competition. So my price has got to be below the competitor price. And I've got a buy more, save more strategy. So every time I double the size, I want to save 10%. So in my 6-pack of Coke has a cost that's shown and a current price, which says that the minimum margin should be here, 660, which we're above, so we're happy about that. The competition is a little bit lower than we are, so we're gonna, we want to respond to that. And then the 12-pack is priced at this price. And so if we don't change the 12-pack, we need to be at this price, because otherwise it's cheaper to buy 2 6-packs than to buy a 12-pack. We want that incentive for the 12-pack, and so we've got this real conflicting situation here where we want to go down for competition, we want to go up for size, and then we have the optimum price, which is right here. Now the hard rule price ends up, we're going to see in a minute, it gets you to this point. And if we look at that, so this is without changing the 12-pack. Basically, you've got a feasible range here where the margin rule says be above here, competitive says below there, size rule wants you up above there, and I can't satisfy all of them. So I want to be, usually with these hard rules, you either want to minimize the violation of the lowest priority rule, which would be the size rule in this case, which is just arbitrarily picked in terms of priority, or you want, if that's not driving your decision, you want to be as close to optimum as possible. So let's take a look at this though, because this is looking at the 6-pack in isolation, but you think about these prices, it's kind of like there's a spring between the 6-pack and the 12-pack, and you can push the 12-pack up or down. You can, you're not constrained to just change the price of the 6-pack in isolation. You can change both, and a good smart rules engine will look at both and work in tandem across both products to get the right price. And again, just kind of notating that that relationship in size. So let's look at this. We're going to look now at the 12-pack and the 6-pack. And so I've given you some information about the 12-pack, its cost, its price, the margin price, the competitor price, the size relationship if you fix the 6-pack, and then the optimum price, and again, I'm showing you what the soft rule heuristic would do as well. So I'm going to show you how it got to that and what the hard rule will do. So is this better than that? So let's take a look. Let's really understand this. So you have all these different price points influencing the heuristic, and all it's doing is just finding some kind of a centroid of all those different considerations. So the soft rule heuristic will land you right there. So what does that mean right there? Well, I've got the 6-pack price along the x-axis, and I've got the 12-pack price along the y-axis. And so it's going to say, be just below $7 and, be above 13, be at those, that's the price combination for the 12-pack and the 6-pack that the soft rule heuristic will arrive at. Now let's look at hard rules. What does hard rules do? Well, both pack sizes have a minimum margin rule. So on the 6-pack, it says be above 660. On the 12-pack, it says be above 1279. So anywhere in this shaded green area is fair game. You can be at any of those prices and you are satisfying the margin rule. Okay, so we can be anywhere in there. And I'm showing you for reference where hard rules actually will land once it considers all the rules. So now let's consider the competitive rule. For the 6-pack, we want to be below 689 and the 12-pack below 1369. So anywhere in this green shaded area is fair game. Anywhere in there will satisfy the competitive rule. And again, I'm right on the border of that region with this, with the hard rules. But the soft rule heuristic doesn't quite make it. So it violates that competitive rule. Not by much, but it does violate it. Now, if you look at the size rule, there's a relationship where the 6-pack has to be priced relative to the 12-packs. And that region that satisfies that relationship is anywhere under that curve. So anywhere in here is going to satisfy the size relationship. The heuristic doesn't make it, but the hard rules does. So let's look at all these rules together. So basically what you have here is your margin rule saying be above these two lines, competitive rule being below these lines, the size rule being below this slope. So that gray area is the only region that satisfies all the rules. And we picked this point in that gray area because it's the closest to the optimum price within the feasible range. It maximizes the value in that feasible, while satisfying the rules. The soft rule heuristic, not only does it not satisfy all the rules, it's not as close to the optimum. So, there you go. Now let's talk about ending numbers for a minute. Within that feasible range, there are price points that satisfy the ending numbers. These are the points that end in 9s, for example. So you can't just go to any point in that feasible range. You can really only go to the ending number values that are acceptable. And so again, you're going to one of these points that's closest to the optimum. Now, if you're doing your rounding after all your rules, one danger that you could encounter is you may arrive with, the optimum price is 665, and then you round that to 669, and you may end up violating a rule that you didn't intend to violate. So you really need to make sure that if you're going to do, that your ending numbers are incorporated right into your rules engine. This idea of rounding at the end has the danger of, resulting in prices that violate your rules. So you got to be very careful of that. All right, so just to summarize, hard and soft rules are better because they're more rigorous and optimal, and they incorporate ending numbers within the rules engine. Soft rules account for the cost of rules, so they're very nice for coming up with a nice compromise between trying to make money and trying to comply with the rules. That's kind of built into them, but you still have to monitor how much am I giving up with my rules. You certainly have to do that with hard rules, but you still have to do that with soft rules. You got to track the cost of rules in both cases. But there are some ways to set your strategy around the cost of rule to make it easier for you. But that's another webinar. Hard rules are very easy to configure because now you're not really setting a penalty function. You're just saying, oh, I want this, I care about this more than that. Like I care about competition more than margin or something. And they're very transparent. They're very easy to understand. You know, did I satisfy the rule? Did I not? Was the rule impactful? These are things that are very easy to track. Now, if you're doing things like tobacco pricing or beer and wine, where there can be hard minimums, hard maximums, certain relationships between brands that have to be enforced in a very hard way, you can't use soft rules, and you certainly can't use a heuristic. You've got to use hard rules for that. Anytime you have a compliance issue, like you can, you know, maybe the vendor is giving you a vendor deal, but you have to be below a certain price. That's a hard rule, and you can't depend on soft rules to do that. So that's a little discussion about where you would use hard rules and soft rules and so on. So now, when are these rules important? And what, you know, let's just kind of look at these rules a little bit more. That, you know, so almost every vertical in retail, almost every category cares about margin, competition, and ending numbers. Almost everyone. So you're going to have those rules pretty ubiquitous. Convenience stores tend to not really care about larger package sizes. So they're not really, you know, this idea of up purchase incentives, it's not really there for convenience. In convenience, you want people to come in frequently. And the idea of getting them to buy a larger package size means that they're going to go away for a longer period of time before they need to come back. So, you know, package size rules are very important, as well as brand rules, but in convenience, the size probably is less so. Tobacco, you've got a lot of really interesting rules there between buy down constraints and penny profits and state minimums. Online doesn't care about the number of price changes. You can change prices all day long. You know, there's no cost of changing a price tag. If you have electronic shelf tags, then you can change in the store pretty frequently, but generally brick and mortar retail with labels, shelf tags, you're pretty limited on how many price changes you can make at a time. You know, there's a lot of interest in rules across brand and size and other features of a product, like organic or energy store, or how many count in the vitamin C bottle. How many count, you know, is it a 60 count bottle? Is it, you know, 50 milligrams? Is it 200 milligrams? Those are all, you know, things get really interesting when you start considering all these attributes. You know, multi-buy. You see a lot of retailers say buy two for $5. That applies great in convenience. You know, you see that all the time there. You see it in grocery. You don't see it in consumer appliances, gas grills, refrigerators. No one's buying two washers, you know, washing machines. But DIY retailers do have pricing tiers for pros. So you may still see buy 10 refrigerators and, you know, get a discount. That definitely happens with pro pricing. And then commodities, if you're selling copper pipe, you might end in a one, you know, $2.01 per foot. That's because copper and fuel, these things come down to the penny, if not fraction of a penny sometimes. Vendor deals sometimes come with compliance requirements. Soft lines gets into a whole nother area of rules around markdown budget, open to buy. If you get into clearance, you have time between markdowns, markdown depth. So this area of rules for retail is rich and you know, full of considerations. And you really want to make sure that your rules engine is rigorous, you know, is full featured and can do all these things. And so I appreciate everyone's attention today. I think we covered everything we said we were going to do. Let's just double check. We definitely talked about the different types of rules, how rules and optimization work. We talked about hard rules and soft rules, and then this heuristic that says, I don't need all that science, so I'll just do this simple thing. We talked about localization, what happens when rules conflict, how do you maintain premiums across brand and size. We could go deeper on that one, but we covered some things there. And how do hard rules and soft rules relate to one another? How do they compare? Ending numbers, and then we just had a discussion about, how rules apply to different, categories and verticals. So again, thank you very much for your attention and attending this webinar.